This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're very fortunate tonight to have as our guest one of my favorite people in Alabama politics. Legendary guy. He's a great guy. John McMillan, our state agriculture commissioner. John is in the middle or toward the ends of his second four-year term. He will, at the end of 2018, have been our agriculture commissioner for 8 years. And when he, like yesterday, he ran, he was on this show with us. And I said then, I says, oh, John is the best qualified guy I've ever seen in my life to run for agriculture commissioner. Matter of fact, I said this, if you had put his resume into a computer in the merit system, they'd pick John McMillan to be agriculture commissioner. It was a merit system post. He's a long-time legislator, head of the conservation department under Fob James, just been around state politics a while, one of the quality guys in state government, probably going to run for governor next year. And John, good to have you on the show.
Great to be with you again, Steve. Thank you so much.
You'd be one of the best qualified running for governor, too.
Well, I think so, or I wouldn't be getting into this, but it's not about me, you know. It's about this state and the crisis of leadership that I think we have in the state, so we'll see.
Well, being in the agriculture business and almost your life, you know the 4-H speaking contest thing. I look like everybody who ever won a 4-H speaking contest is going to try to run for governor.
It looks like it.
You can sit here and name, I mean, not just those of y'all who are viable statewide office holders, but I mean everybody who ever walked around and chewed gum like they're going to run for governor.
I think we'll have a wide choice.
Do you know if you do that, John, what happens? And I've got a column, I've written about this before. That old friends and neighbors will kick in. I think you and I have talked about this. That and Jess and I were talking about it before the show. Mm-hmm. We were talking about that Senate race. And he was asking my thinking on it, and I said, well, you know, I think Moore's got a place in the runoff. I think it's a race between Luther Strange and Mo Brooks to get in the runoff. I believe if I was Mo Brooks, I'd just stay in the Tennessee Valley and spend my money right there and get folks out to vote. And going in 2018, let's assume everybody who says they're going to run for governor runs. I know you hadn't actually lived in Baldwin County for the last 10 years. You lived here in Montgomery. Of course, you've been agriculture commissioner and a leader in the state government, but being from Baldwin County, you know, if you get a crowded field, say 10 people, you get a strong vote in Baldwin County, you'd like to make the runoff.
Yeah, you never can tell. Baldwin County is, as you know, is continuing rapid growth for sure.
Matter of fact, I saw figures where Baldwin County is outgrowing Shelby now.
It is, yeah.
But you've got roots there in Baldwin County for generations. Tell our folks about your family being down in the forestry business. And I remember growing up, we talked about this 100 times, but every time I think about it, and I don't want to repeat ourselves, but when I was little, you know, you get a map of the state, and agriculture was the premier, it still is the premier business, but you'd have a map of the state, and they'd talk about what part of the state grew certain things. And everybody had corn, or livestock, or forestry. Then Baldwin County grew potatoes. It and Coleman grew potatoes.
That's right.
And matter of fact, they were so prominent that you told me one time that they let y'all out of school and skip football practice or something to pick potatoes.
Yeah, our school system operated so that we were out of school in time to help pick up not Irish potatoes. And I always said that football coaches were in collusion with the farmers because they wanted us running around with those 100-pound sack of potatoes.
That's what it was. John, tell us about your family going back to Baldwin County. Now,
well,
what part of the county around Bay Minette?
North of Bay Minette, a little community called Stockton is where the McMillan side, but people don't tend to talk about it or realize it as much, but my mother's family had been around Escambia County about as long as the McMillans have in Baldwin County, so we do.
Well, you and Lynn Stewart got similar backgrounds then.
We do, yeah. Except she came from Escambia County to Baldwin, and I got the connection with both.
She does too. She's got roots in both those counties.
Oh She lives in Bay Minette most of the time.
she told me that. She's very popular in that church down there.
Yeah, she's great.
If you talk to somebody from Baldwin County, they talk about how she does everything in that church. I guess she goes down there every weekend.
Yeah, she does. She's her daddy's a great friend of mine, and she usually meets him at the Stagecoach in Stockton every Friday for lunch.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Right there.
He's in Atmore, and she's in Bay Minette, so that's a good meeting place.
John, we talked about before the show about old Ricky Rhodes. How he and Robin doing? You ever see him?
I see him every now and then at one thing or another. They're doing fine.
He was a contemporary of mine at the University of Alabama, and he gave me my nickname, Tree. You love to call me Tree, you and Jess do.
Yeah.
But it's a good.
It's a very apt name.
Well, because I'm tall. That was the way they gave it to me. It's like we were sitting around like Animal House, and we weren't that raucous, but he was trying to give everybody a nickname. He said, "Look," he said, "We're gonna give him one. He's tall and named Flowers. We'll call him Tree." Mine stuck. I don't go to the Capitol or to the ball game. I don't get Tree. But they always answer me too. You went up there to Rhodes College of School. You must have been smart as Dickens in high school. That's a pretty tough school.
Well, I barely got out of high school and barely got out of college.
But you went to Bay Minette to school.
Yeah, we had a junior high school in Stockton, and then went to Bay Minette to high school.
You and Steve went all through school together.
We did.
Would y'all always get along?
No, we fought all the time when we were growing up.
I love Steve McMillan. He's my favorite. So you just left that House seat. You were in that House seat from Baldwin County and elected in '78.
Baldwin and Mobile counties.
You had part of Mobile.
Yeah.
You were elected to the House.
74, actually.
74, you were elected to the House.
Re-elected in '78.
What business were you in when you were elected to the House?
We were in the family sawmill business.
There in Stockton.
In Stockton, yeah.
And then you went on to the legislature in '74. If you don't mind me asking, how old were you when you went to the legislature?
Oh gosh, I'd have to calculate it. I guess
in your 30s.
Early 30s, yeah, maybe 32, 33.
I was 30 when I went to the House from Pike County, but in your early 30s, then you served one full term, and was reelected to the House of Representatives in '78 from Baldwin, and then in the middle of that term you went to in Fobbs' cabinet. Is that right?
About a year and a half into the term, became Commissioner of Conservation.
Who had quit? Who had left?
There was a controversy along about that time, and Fobb had a vacancy. No, it was somebody else.
Wasn't Jim Martin? He was in Hunt.
No, Jim was, and he was in, and Fobbs. Yeah.
Jim Martin's still doing well, you know that?
He is. I hadn't seen him in probably a year or so, but I keep up with him.
You know, I campaigned for him when he ran when he was running for things. I really believe he won that '62 U.S. Senate race.
Probably, good chance he did.
No, I'm going to tell you something. They counted him out. They went to bed in 1962, and there was no Republican U.S. senator from the South. And Jim Martin was ahead of Lister Hill, and NBC News, Huntley and Brinkley came on and says the South elected a Republican senator. Jim Martin, a businessman from Gadsden, has defeated the legendary Lister Hill, 30-year veteran of the United States Senate. And the next day, or 4 days later, there were 4 counties in North Alabama. Walker was one of them. Fayette was another one. That old legendary probate judge of Walker, there were boxes they found there. We came in about 2,000 to 2, something like that, and they counted him out. They came out. They won a Republican.
Mr. Jim's, he's an eloquent speaker, as you know. He's still a good speaker.
You know, his wife Pat was a Miss Alabama.
Yeah.
And she could sing.
Great voice.
And people in Gadsden say he still goes to either the First Methodist or First Baptist Church up there every Sunday morning, and Pat still sings in the choir. Every Sunday. You know how people get to sitting in the same chair,
Yeah, oh yeah.
But now, one of the reasons you went to Rhodes is because you're Presbyterian.
That's right. And
that's a Presbyterian school. Is that one of the reasons?
Yeah, and there were several of us. It's just one of those things that kind of cycles, I guess, but there must have been 12 or 15 of us from Mobile and Baldwin County, primarily Presbyterian youth, went up there all at the same time. Yeah.
Oh. Now, is Ann your wife from Montgomery? Where's she from?
Catherine is. She's from Bay Minette.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
She's spelled with a K or C?
K. High school sweetheart.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So y'all, I didn't know that. Why was I calling her Ann?
That's Harry's wife.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And campaigned for me.
Is Harry your cousin?
Well, I tease him about it. I'm gonna get his DNA one of these days. And check it out.
You know, I did that ancestry thing.
I did too.
I was thinking I had a little Indian in me, not 1 ounce of Indian.
Well, that's a shame.
I was really wanting some Indian blood.
Especially if it's Creek.
I know. Well, that's what I thought. I'd always heard, see, my family's from Pike County, and the Creeks dominated that part of the state. My family, like yours, has been in this area of the state for 100 years on both sides. And I figured one of them on my mama's side back had married a Creek Indian. It was some legendary thing. And I said, I'm going to make you prove that. And doggone, not one bit. I was totally Scotch-Irish, like everybody else, you know, just like 55 or 60%.
Yeah, that's the way I was.
Everybody who came to Alabama was that, you know,
Pretty
just
much,
Scotch-Irish. But I didn't mean to get off on all that stuff. But anyway, Bay Minette and Baldwin County have sure grown a lot, hadn't they?
Yes, sir, from the time.
That Fairhope's grown.
Yeah, that whole Eastern Shore area and everything down around Orange Beach and Gulf Shores is just amazing.
Everybody's trying to retire down there to Fairhope.
They say that trend of people wanting to live within 50 miles of the coast is still a dominant factor.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can live
It
in
sure is down there.
Uh-huh. John, tell me this much. Now, so then you went to after the house, Steve, your brother, took your house seat, and he's been there in a special election, I assume.
Since 80. Yeah.
80, and that means after this time he'd be 38 years. Is it 38 or 40? 38 years. John, how long were you conservation director on the farm? 2 years?
About 2.5 years, but a little over 2.5.
And then you became head of the
Forestry
Association. That's when you and I first got to know each other.
Yeah.
When I was, I got to go by there and sign a book for that boy Tom this afternoon. But anyway, that was, you were over there how many years?
Like 23, 24.
That long?
Yeah.
No wonder you've been up here so long. You've been there the whole time over there here in Montgomery. Have y'all lived in the same place?
We have. We moved in. We came to Montgomery temporarily and moved into a small townhouse temporarily over 30 years ago.
So you live in the same place?
Yeah, yeah.
Were your children raised up here in Montgomery?
No, our oldest son was like a 4th grader when we came up here. The other one was about 4 years younger.
Aren't one of your children in Birmingham?
Yeah, our oldest son is an attorney in Birmingham.
My oldest daughter's an attorney in Birmingham.
Is that right?
She's 39, Jenny.
Yeah.
But everybody seems to gravitate up there. John, if you run for governor, how will you attack it regionally, or how? Jess and I were talking about it before. We were talking about the Senate race and everything. How do you do that? If you're running statewide, when you ran for agriculture commissioner, did you try to take it and spend more time in certain areas, or spend your money in the Birmingham media market, or was there a game plan? It's like almost you're trying to bite off more you can chew when you run statewide.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like eating an elephant one bite at a time. But and speaking of an elephant, with those lower profile offices, I think you have to really focus on the Republican counties and the Republican Party organizations, and more than in a gubernatorial race, which is, as you know, so much bigger profile, higher profile, and bigger game to play.
Yeah. Gets to be raising money is important.
Raising money is critical to any of the politics. For better or worse, it's just I guess, in one sense, a curse we have to live with.
John,
it's not the most fun part of it.
No. Old Shelby loves to raise money, though. You know, that's why he got so much in his campaign thing.
I've told people, I think the only 2 people I've ever seen that enjoy raising money are Senator Shelby and former Governor Siegelman.
Yeah, they both enjoyed it. Yeah. It's like, you know, they just had to tie old Huffman to a chair and make him do it. He hated it. But old Shelby said, it's time for fundraising now. Of course, he did it all day long.
Yeah.
Hey, John, when you talk about that running statewide, you've been around the state the whole 7 years you've been agriculture commissioner, though, so far. You've been traveling.
Yeah, with my jobs, I've spent a lot of time, especially in rural Alabama.
So you think that that's where your best thing is, be rural?
Well, I think, I hope I'll have a lot of support all around the state. And, of course, we'll be coming up with some proposals that I think are going to be attractive to people. I think one advantage I've got, having been around state government a good bit, including the 14 years on the State Personnel Board as an appointee, we've got to do something different in Alabama. And I think I tell people that, you know, we've got a choice. This is every election is really important, but this election for governor, with the leadership situation that we have, and with the opportunity we've got, I think, to make some changes. We're going to have a significant number of new legislators in the House and the Senate. I think the most important thing the governor does is have to have the ability to work with the legislature and to surround himself with good people to be agency heads and cabinet positions. I think I'm uniquely qualified in both of those areas, and I'm going to be coming up with some dramatic change suggestions based on the experience I've had in Montgomery and the years of disappointment I've had in Montgomery with the route that we've taken to seemingly just continue to do the same thing over and over again. And you know what Einstein said about that? That's insanity, to keep doing the same thing and think you're going to get different results.
John, if you don't mind, share some of the thoughts, ideas you might want to talk about when you run for governor.
Well, one of the things that I'm really interested in, there are two or three, we're all interested in education and in different things, but what I want to do basically is bring the same type business principles that we use to fix the Department of Agriculture and Industries. Things like when we got out there, we had 200 employees in the building, and there was a printer on everybody's desk. Well, our IT folks, instead of being able to look at new things and develop new technology, they spent all the time running around, like 7 of them, fixing those printers and keeping them going. So many years ago, businesses networked the computer system. So we have 3 big computers on each floor now, and they're networked. So we don't have to spend all of our time just fixing printers. And that's just one example, but the difference with business principles is, and I think President Trump would tell you that he's found this out too, business principles work, but eventually you get to the point where you've got to have some legislation and you've got to be able to deal with the political side of it as well. And I cannot overemphasize how much Governor Bentley and this legislature worked with us in the 5 or 6 substantial changes we made in reforming and revising the operation of our Department of Agriculture and Industries.
What were some of the revisions y'all have done over there?
The biggest one we did, and probably the one I'd say I'm the most proud of because I think it'll become a model for the rest of the country, is being able to do something about the weights and measures part of it, where we are responsible for the accuracy, the calibration of every measuring device used in commerce in the state. When we got through with the budget cuts and the layoffs that we had, we only had 7 people left to do that job. And that is, you know, we probably have 100,000 gas pumps in the state, for example, and 7 people can't do that on an annual basis. So we were able to pass legislation that fixed that problem in an acceptable manner to everybody involved, and also to protect the public's interest as consumers. And this is an issue that buyers and sellers are both concerned about. So that's probably the biggest thing we did. But another important thing we did, for some reason, at some point in time, the Department of Agriculture and Industries was tasked with collecting a portion of the gas tax. Well, you know, how stupid is that in this day and time when we didn't have the people, the personnel, or the technology to do a good job? So we got with the Department of Transportation and the Revenue Department and passed legislation to shift that responsibility to revenue. So, you know, just the experience of being able, Charles Bishop was a tremendous help with me, especially in the early stages from his experience as commissioner and also as a state senator. We were able to immediately jump in there right behind proration and shift around some of the funding with the organizational session of the legislature, and that saved a number of jobs at our agency. And he actually came down and helped me with the Senate, and we were able to get Governor Bentley and the House to work with us too. So, you know, that's another part of it, is having those relationships and knowing who can get things done and who can make things happen. And that's where the time I spent on the personnel board, I think, can be extremely helpful.
John, how many terms did old Bishop serve as Commissioner of Agriculture? One or two?
I think he served. I believe he served 2 terms. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. But he knew what he was doing then, huh?
He did. You know, and he was not unlike me. He had experience in the legislature and knew something about the way the process works in Montgomery. And that's the average person doesn't understand. You do how important it is to understand how the system works. And I'll give you another good example of just something that seems elementary that I would want to do. Every legislative session, there are a number of state agencies that have to pass legislation. We had to do that with weights and measures, but some of those things can take 2 or 3 years to get passed, not because they're not good ideas, but just because of the process. So I would intend to sit down with the legislative leadership and just set aside a week, maybe in a third of the way through the session, and another week 2/3 of the way through the session, where we would only deal with departmental legislation. Departments like banking and revenue and DOT, and almost all of them have good legislation that needs to be considered, and they shouldn't have to waste their whole time over there for 2 or 3 years focused on that, when it could be done. The things that we proposed all passed, you know, almost 90-something% to 0. So it shouldn't take 2 or 3 years to accomplish those kind of things.
You know, you're hitting on a point that really is obvious for those who've have been around it, and that is, if any governor is going to be successful, they've got to have a good working relationship with the legislature.
Absolutely.
The legislature constitutionally has a lot of power, and you and I grew up in an era that we had strong governors.
Yeah.
You know, Wallace was unique, and he took such power in the legislature, but in the last 2 or 3 governors, they've been shown how irrelevant they can become. I mean, Bentley really had a small relationship with the legislature, and so did Riley. They got some things accomplished, but you got to have them. You got to build relationships with them, which you already have.
Yeah, a lot of folks in Alabama don't realize that at the same time so much power was taken from the lieutenant governor, it was also taken from the governor.
Exactly.
In the way of appointments and those kind of things. So it's imperative that a governor be able to work with the legislature.
And you brought up a good point too, that you're going to have an ordinance, especially in the Senate. I'm told there's 17.
It looks like there could be a third of the House and almost half of the Senate, pretty easy.
That'd be half the Senate.
That would be new people.
That'd be very unusual.
Be very unusual for an election that didn't take place under some unique situation like court-ordered reapportionment or something.
Right. You know, that hadn't been resolved completely yet.
It's still hanging around out there. It's one of the factors, too.
Yeah. John, tell me this. I've asked you this numerous times. As agriculture commissioner, what's our fastest growing agricultural thing? You told me one time that just horticulture and landscaping was becoming big.
The green industry, we call it. Yeah, that's been a fast growing sector. We also seeing more and more growth in folks growing produce and fruits and vegetables in Alabama is another fast growing. In the whole scheme of things, you know, it's not like up there with cotton and corn and peanuts and those kind of things, but it's a fast growing sector. But we still have a lot of wheat, corn, cotton, peanuts.
That's all over the state, is the fruit and vegetables, isn't it?
It is.
Every corner.
Yeah. For example, and we could talk all day about the serious impact that too much rains had this year after too little last year. But yeah, we're seeing, for example, in South Mobile County, tremendous success with satsuma trees down there, and we're seeing that in southeast Alabama. It's growing. We got blueberries, we got watermelons, we got sweet potatoes, and we've been able to work. I'm really proud of what we've been able to do in getting a lot of those type of fruits and vegetables into our school lunchroom program. The farm school program has been very successful.
John, you have also been involved with this, doing business with Cuba, hadn't you?
We have. We've made a couple of trips down there, and we still export a lot of poultry to Cuba. It's almost it's almost unbelievable what we do, but we are averaging about 7,000 tons a month of primarily frozen leg quarters through the Port of Mobile to Cuba.
Let me ask you this question. If Georgia's a big poultry state too.
Georgia, Alabama, and Arkansas are the big poultry states.
But we have an advantage because of our port in Mobile, don't we?
We do with the export for sure. Of course, Georgia's got Savannah, but and all of that poultry that goes to Cuba and other places is not grown in Alabama, but a dominant part of it is, and that's another growing sector. We've seen tremendous poultry impact in North Alabama for a long time, but now we've had some in Southeast Alabama, but we've got a lot of growth in Southeast Alabama right now as well. So I think we have the potential for more growth in poultry in this state.
What companies do most of the farmers still do business through a company a lot of times?
Yeah, it's what's called a highly integrated industry, like a few others. But yeah, the growers are all affiliated with one of the larger companies, and we have almost all of them represented in Alabama with just hate to start trying to name them, but a lot of them, almost all of them, at least partially in Alabama, because a lot of them have the Georgia-Alabama line where they're operating in both states.
That's right, right.
And then we do have a little bit over from Mississippi down in West Alabama too.
Yeah. Well, John, our time's up. It goes by in a hurry, doesn't it?
It does. When you're having fun, it always goes by in a hurry.
Folks, our guest tonight has been our Agriculture Commissioner, two-term Agriculture Commissioner, former legislator, former conservation director, member of the Personnel Board, a leader in the state government for numerous years, and a good friend of mine, a good Alabamian, John McMillan, our Agriculture Commissioner. John will probably be on the ballot next year as governor, y'all, and he's been here in Montgomery 40 years. He's about like a Montgomeryan now. We thank John for being with us. We thank you viewers for watching. Hope you tune again next week for Alabama Politics. Thank you.